And this is the start of the new segment, and it's called Hot Takes. So, James, what is our anime hot take?
My anime hot take for this week is Digimon Adventure is just so much better than Pokemon in so many ways. And I think that it was a show that got its flowers when it was on TV. Definitely was a thing, at least for 3 or 4 years when they were running on Fox. At least that's my memory growing up, was watching it on Fox. But it always got the bad rap, essentially because it never really had a game franchise that could compete with Pokemon, which was this international phenomenon, still ongoing, still prints money. And Digimon still exists, but it's like, kind of fallen by the wayside. Those who are into it know that, whenever a new game drops or there's some merch or there's something else, but it's nowhere near like the cash cow that Pokemon became and the pop culture phenomenon that Pokemon became. But
yeah, Pokemon came hard with the marketing, like immediately. Because back then, I definitely remember when I was in elementary school, I think this was like fourth grade. Yeah, fourth grade would be the year. And I remember those little like pamphlet booklets that they would hold out for lunch that would like advertise like scholastic books and things like that. And every time I got one, Pokemon was all over it. And so Pokemon basically was like shoved down our throats to the point where we're just like, okay, now what the fuck is this? I see it everywhere. What's going on? While with Digimon, you only saw it on TV. So if you missed it, especially if you missed those first few episodes and you saw it, you'd be like, what the fuck is going on and what is this and why is it happening? And, this just looks like a Pokemon ripoff, when in actuality it's not. It's actually way better. I completely agree with the hot take.
Yeah, I think, as far as kids TV goes, I think it may be one of the first times, at least in watching your typical Saturday morning cartoon, that I was noticeably into a like season-long arc of a story, and not sort of these one-off or more episodic Monster of the Week type deals that characterize a lot of the stuff that was on television for kids, including a lot of the anime that ran on regular TV, which was very, very limited. At that point, this is maybe like 98. I'm getting like, somewhere
98.
But yeah, about 98. So like I was hip to anime as a thing. I knew that it existed. I knew that it was different from regular cartoons. But I wasn't necessarily in like an elitist position where I'm like, oh, well, I watch this. Only babies watch that. I was watching everything, and I was a big Pokemon fan. And I became a Digimon fan very rapidly. And it's interesting that kind of both got their life from the same place. Pokemon and Digimon were both originally like Tamagotchi-like games, and then they, branched off. Pokemon got its Game Boy series. I think Digimon ultimately did as well. But I don't know if it at what point it got localized in the United States. But either way,
wait, the Digimon had like Game Boy games?
I think if not Game Boy, by the time of the Game Boy Advance, there were Digimon games that were out there.
Okay, I can agree.
Yeah, but either way, it was that original like travel game that was the nexus for getting the animation series developed for both. So on that end, I would say that like you can track both in their lifespan in popular culture, pretty apples to apples, given that they started at the same time, they started from the same type of product. And they had worldwide penetration, within a few years. Things that like I remember now, but I may not have been paying as much attention to or given as much weight when I was a kid, was that there was something different about the Digimon dub than the Pokemon dub. And I'm not here to say one is better than the other. I think I like both. The first season of Pokemon on TV is a classic for a reason, and I think the dub itself is also really good. Yeah, I mean, it's good in the sense of it accomplished what it needed to accomplish with that series. I mean, not necessarily good in the let's put it in the pantheon of all time awesome awesome dubs.
No.
That it was not. They probably had like 7 or 8 principal cast, and they played like every character, and there was some wacky weird stuff. There's the usual localization problems where, you know, adult characters can't drink alcohol and all kinds of other weird things that happen.
But then they had a gun. And what was that? That was the 3rd episode?
Yes.
Was that the 3rd? Yes. That was so okay.
I mean, Digimon had an episode that got cut or re-edited because it involved an older woman trying to solicit a young boy to get in her car for nefarious reasons, and then them eventually like running into the police. So they had to change that. But you know, all these series have their things. But the thing that's interesting is that the Pokemon and its sort of licensing and distribution ran one direction, but Digimon actually came in through Saban, which was behind all the Power Rangers. I forgot
about that. Yeah.
And it was and now that you think back, yeah, it was included in a block that I think started with Power Rangers, and Digimon was usually like the last thing. Once all the live action stuff ran, it may have been like an hour, and then you got Digimon for first a half hour, then they upped it to 2. The bottom line there was that like what it was being positioned with, like as a lead-in, was a more I would say Power Rangers was more of an an older kid thing. Like young kids were into it, but like because it involved like acting and teenagers and everything else, like that's what it was positioned to be. It was positioned to be a product for young teenagers. You know, somewhere in that 11 to
the
14.
tweens.
Yeah, tweens. That was the target audience. And the same thing for Digimon. Pokemon was much broader. And the reason why I think that ultimately Digimon was a better show was because of some of the choices that were made in going in about what was the intention. Obviously, both of them were to sell merchandise. We ain't dumb. We know what the point is. Pokemon's on TV so that you go buy the game, you go buy the cards, you go buy
the plushes.
Exactly, the plush stuff, the little toys. That's what it is. Digimon's purpose is exactly the same, but they went about it in very different ways.
I think Digimon had a more mature theme overall, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Which probably turned certain people off, and other ones continued. Also, it's probably because the format of the show, how what Pokemon had kind of like the Monster of the Week almost kind of episodes. Or not Monster of the Week, but kind
Story of the Week, yeah.
Yeah, Story of the Week. And Digimon had an overarching plot line with distinct moments that you can always remember, while with Pokemon, if you ask me anything that happened from the Kanto region, I'm literally going to be like, he lost. That's what I remember.
When you go back and you actually watch some of the material, like especially like season 1 of Pokemon, season 1 and 2, basically the first 10 years of Pokemon, that show violates so many basic storytelling modes. Like, first of all, they only have like 3 types of episodes. There's a Pokemon in trouble episode, there's a human in trouble episode, and then there's a teams in trouble episode. And that's it. They basically wash and repeat that for however long until, eventually you have to do like a gym battle where someone realizes the true meaning of friendship and like, Ash wins. That's great. There's no real build up to anything with any stakes that ever happens at all. And that makes sense if you think about it as a show for children, because generally you don't want to stress little kids out with the kind of like dramatic, life
tension. Or death situation.
Yeah, life or death situation, or anything that creates real tension and uncertainty. Because if you're 7-year-olds, both don't want to see that and don't understand it, and probably don't want anything to do with it. And I'm saying this as someone who hasn't been 7 in multiple decades. So take that with a grain of salt, parents. But regardless, that's a choice. Digimon from jump sets up what the stakes are very, very, very quickly. It's world-ending disaster. And all the characters involved, their goal is to go home and end the disaster. And so the whole show is built around, building up those characters and those stories towards resolving that conflict. It's not like Shakespeare. It's not the most complicated thing in the world, but it's some. But
there's a through line.
Exactly, and it's some real basic storytelling shit. The the characters in Pokemon are all terrible. They're terrible people, they're terrible role models, and they're very unsuccessful at everything.
I just want to say that Giovanni's the worst criminal I've ever fucking witnessed in an anime. I don't know how nor why Team Rocket is still operating to this day, but it makes no sense. He's a horrible fucking criminal. He's a horrible boss. Jesse and James should have been fired ages ago. On the flip side, with Digimon, all I can remember from Digimon is just how much I enjoyed the relationships that were being explored between all of the characters, and also that they had so many different characters with different personalities, and they had them like interact with each other, and like it wasn't all happy dappy super slappy shit.
Absolutely.
Like people were mad at each other. Like there was an arc where they like split up.
Yes.
They like split up. They were like, we don't fuck with you no more.
Over
like,
ideological differences about how to deal with the problem that they were trying to deal with.
Yes.
Like if you run down run it down, right? So Ash Ketchum, he's a whiny asshole with no character development whatsoever after like the first few episodes of the first season.
Yes.
He's accompanied by Misty, who is an irresponsible teenager who just like makes herself homeless after losing to a child. Okay. You have Brock, who's a sex pest and a man-child. And the best character in the show...
A sex pest?
He's a sex pest! Everywhere he goes, he's harassing the same families. Like, right? 'Cause aren't all the Nurse Joys, they're related to each other?
Oh my god, yes!
The police officers aren't? Or something like that?
This is how bad it is. That was one of the main like gags throughout those first few seasons, and as soon as it went away, I completely forgot about it.
Yeah, because it's just straight up sexual harassment. That's it. He just wanders the countryside with kids who aren't his own, harassing women who he finds to be attractive, and everyone laughs it off. Like he had a job, right? Like he had a full-time job.
He was a gym leader.
Yeah.
He had a full family. He had to take care of his brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and then he was like, peace out. I'm just going to go harass. He's literally stalking all these sisters of one woman who turned him down. Like, it's insane. And then the best character of the show is Pikachu and has 0 lines. 0 lines. And that should tell you something
Pikachu
about the show where the best character is the one that doesn't speak.
Do you think if Pikachu would be a better character if it were able to speak English?
Absolutely
like
not, because they would not be able to write it. And it's a good thing they didn't have that happen. But I'm just saying that it's amazing that the best character in the show with the most range and the most like growth and change every time is the only one that has no spoken lines.
But he did have a spoken line in that fucking movie.
That is true. Yes.
And that was, you know what? You're right. Because I honestly was, even at the age of what was that, 9 or 10? I kind of was like, why the fuck is he talking?
I mean, it's something that, and I'm not just saying this like, James is salty about Pokemon, so that's why he's going in. Even the creators of this series recognize this immediately, because in every single like mass market movie they've ever put out since the series became a thing, the principal character or Pokemon that drives the action can talk. Every one of them. They all have like some psychic ability, or they talk through another character or something like that. Because it's an unworkable proposition to like build narratives around a bunch of characters with children who cannot speak to each other. Like for 30 years. It doesn't work. Right? Mewtwo could talk. All them other legendaries could talk. Everyone could talk. Because this non-speaking thing don't make no sense. Right? Like you had Bulbasaur emoting. Like, what the fuck is this? It's insane. But and then you compare it to something like Digimon, right? Like we did a like quick rundown of those characters, right? Digimon, Tai, he's a leader, he's aggressive, he's impulsive, but he also learns empathy and compassion, right? He would die for his family, and then when his role is done, he happily passes it on to the next generation. Matt, who is like the sort of rival friend character, he's like the opposite, cautious, conservative, and guess what? He's dealing with his parents' divorce, and he's overprotective of his brother because he's secretly jealous of him, and ultimately goes on to like play bass and have a family and all that other stuff. stuff. And you can go down the list, like, what was one of the girls? Sora.
Mimi.
Oh, Mimi. Yeah, Mimi, right? She was sheltered. She was wealthy. She was, like, played up as, like, an it girl. Her personality was super forward. But she used it all the time to get out of responsibility and kind of, like, pushed all that stuff onto other people because she's A, super lazy, and B, very, very, like, insecure.
Spoiled as fuck.
Right? Which is something a teenager and really anyone who's starting to think can relate to. You know?
Yes.
Or Sora, she was like the tomboy. She was also the mediator. She had problems with her bonding with her mother because her mother was very traditional and she was like, you know, much more of a modern girl/woman in like the late 90s, early 2000s and things that were traditionally, you know, more masculine. And so in the course of the story, she makes up with her mother. She keeps her own identity, but she also learns to like pull in some other things like flower arranging and other things that she actually realized she liked after bonding with her family, you know? And then you got like stuff. There's someone in this cast who can relate to anybody. And that was a benefit. All of these cast members and had stories. They had backstories. They were presented like they were, you know, more than one dimensional, maybe two dimensional, but they interacted with each other in a way that made sense. When you find out that like one of the characters who's like the textbook introvert, I think it's Izzy. He's like a nerd, and then like very quickly he tells you the backstory where he found out that he was adopted, but his parents didn't tell him. And so then he distanced himself from them by focusing much more in that technological, you know, whatever, on the internet and everything else, because it was a way to avoid painful social interaction. That's a real relatable story. Has nothing to do with like, you know, the fantasy elements of the show. It's just like a character that's sketched out for like people with brains. And
it's
you can
actual
just go on
like
down
real life experiences.
Yeah. And I haven't even like mentioned the Digimon themselves, but they fix one of the fundamental problems that Pokemon has, which is if the fantasy monsters that your characters are going to spend all this time with don't actually speak, it's very difficult for them to have personalities that then interact with the storyline. They can be there. They can be a gimmick to like do a thing, you know, make the little kids happy. Oh, he shot a colorful laser beam at the other thing and it fell down and it was a fight. No, they also all have their own inner lives,
personalities
that are independent of the people around them, and also interact with the relationships that the group has. And the group dynamic changes all the time. As you point out, they split up. It's not even once. They split up many, many, many times. Whether it's Matt running after his brother who gets lost, and it's not just, oh, someone got lost, I'm running away. It's because he is overprotective. So when everyone's like, don't run off in the woods, we might get separated for 3 episodes. He's like, well, no, I can't do that because my character informs the decision that I'm making, not the invisible hand of the writer. At least that's what you're supposed to internalize. And so anyway, I think that just at that level, Digimon smashes Pokemon. It's just not even close. Like these are developed characters. And then you move down from that to like the actual presentation. Like Pokemon has been remaking season 1 and 2 of the original series for like 25 years. They've just been remaking the same. It's the exact same structure. Oh, if there's like the 3, adult man-child Pokemon fans, like, well, no, when they got out of the Kanto region, actually, no, I don't want to hear it. If I randomly put on an episode, which I will not do, because I am not going to subject my brain.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, right?
It doesn't make any sense.
There would be no difference between the episode I'm watching in 2020 and the one that I watched on TV in 1999-2000. It's the same setup, basically all the same characters. Like, they just look a lot better. And Ash won 1 Pokemon League after 30 years.
I want to know what happened to Ash's dad. I feel like they never
I don't know.
gave us anything on that. Also, so with having Pokemon around for 20 plus years and having the storyline basically be exactly the same, the only real value I see in it is the games, because it's nice, it's fun, it's kind of like semi nostalgic to like go through a new region and like make a brand new team, not knowing what the fuck is going on. But speaking of the fans and the man children, the Pokemon fandom is so much worse than the Digimon fandom that it's fucking disgusting. The way that you people, and I'm gonna say you people, the way that you people argue about these designs, the difficulty of the games, the plot lines, the basically non-existent plot lines that exist in Pokemon, except for X and Y. I heard that one was actually somewhat decent. But it is for children. It's not for our generation anymore. It came out when we were young, but that shit's not for us. They want to make money. They know their best bet for making money is selling this fucking merchandise. The game really isn't that big of a deal to them because, hey, yeah, they're going to make millions off of that shit, but you're only going to sell that game one time, and they can only put out so much DLC before people start bitching. So what can constantly move? Merchandise. Who's going to buy that shit? The kids are the parents' kids. So that's a huge, like, turning point or like a turn off for me with Pokemon. It's just like, oh, well, you know, it has a competitive scene, it has this, it has that. But when you think about the people that are involved with it, it's like, oh, well, I kind of don't want anything to do with that. While when you look at Digimon on the other side, Digimon doesn't have the same, like, I guess, like, fan base because it doesn't have the video game catalog to compete with it. Like, there's no, like, ongoing, continuing Digimon game that is actively competitive, nor is it built to be. But I will say that I think that Digimon really dropped the ball with smartphones.
Agreed.
I think they dropped the ball with smartphones. I think that they should have been, and if they are, that's great, but we should have a Digimon, like, Tamagotchi, like, you know how they did the Digivices back when Digimon came out as the Tamagotchis? Apparently, I saw something this past week that they're doing that again, and I'm like, that's cute, but give us that shit on our smartphone.
Yeah, that's so much free money. Like, why is that not a thing?
Can you imagine the amount of people? And it's just like, it's like Neopets. Do some Digimon Neopet shit. Neopets was huge. You couldn't even do shit with them motherfuckers, but it was huge. Because you were just raising them. Imagine just starting the app off with just, hey, we're going to give you guys Digimon. It's going to be similar to the Tamagotchi. We're going to be adding features as we go. Have fun. The first feature is you're just raising that bitch. You check in on it multiple times a day. Is it hungry? Is it this? You go on walks, etc., etc. And then they add battling components. And then they say, all right, you're able to Digivolve now. These are the set rules for you to Digivolve to this specific Digimon. And then it take it even further, and it's like, hey, we're going to hold competitions. So that motherfucking Digimon that you've been raising for a year or two, you can actually fight with that online and get shit. Wouldn't it be amazing?
It was so, yeah, like you know what it is? The people, God, the developers of Pokemon, the shareholders of the, the Pokemon company, all the people who've been, whether it's on the broadcast level with the anime or if it's with the merchandising level with cards and everything else, them motherfuckers smelled money from day one. The reason why there is so much Pokemon shit injected into every level of society is because there's someone up there who smells money. Why was Pokemon Go a completely empty and vapid game? How did that become a thing? Because they were like, cell phones exist, people are morons. Yes. Get that shit out there. Let them throw all you gotta do.
Walk in circles.
The only interaction in that game when it launched was swiping once to throw a Pokeball.
And tapping the screen to fight shit at the gym.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah,
I would know.
That's the
I was
only
one of them dumb bitches
actual
out
interaction
there.
Someone had to design. And it took them, and it barely worked. The whole thing barely fucking worked. And they're like, printing money. We're just printing money. It's easy.
They listen. They got a good 60 out of me. I'm not gonna lie. They got me. But I lost weight, so hey.
I was out there baking in the Maryland heat, talking to my random neighbors who I never want to see because now I'm outside in their backyard running after Oddishes and all kinds of other random shit. Like,
what? I will give it to them. One of my favorite memories from living in New York City is the first week that Pokemon Go came out, and all of those websites were coming up where they would actively update like where certain Pokemon were.
Is this that Snorlax stampede that happened in New York?
Oh man, that's only one. You didn't see the Venusaur one.
Oh shit!
There was a Venusaur stampede at Central Park.
Oh shit!
I was there for that shit. It shut down the traffic. Like, it was really fucking it was insane. It's literally, so there's like a at the bottom right hand corner of Central Park, there's like this big statue, and it's a huge open wide space, and there's also a Pokestop there, or whatever you fucking call them, I forgot. But basically, people literally just put a lure there, and that entire spot was just packed with people the entire week. Like, people were bringing water bottles. Motherfuckers was walking through selling snacks. Like, it was literally like turning into like a community space for Pokemon Go in the heat.
Right.
In like 85, 90s weather. Like, niggas were out there. So literally there was one night where everyone was just chilling. People were like, oh yeah, you know, there's a this over here, there's a this over there. And then all of a sudden someone goes, there's a Venusaur on 50. Everyone immediately booked it.
I saw videos, yo.
Like, niggas was running, like, the streets didn't matter. Like, the streets didn't matter. The cars had to wait because it was like, you gonna run over everyone, or you're just gonna stay still. You gotta stay still. Those are some of my favorite memories from living in New York. Like, there was one time where a Dragonite showed up, and I sprinted 8 blocks and caught that bitch. I caught that motherfucker, and I was like, wow. I was like, damn. Like, I wouldn't do this shit for a lot of things, but these niggas got me. Like, these niggas got me out here, and it got to the point where random people who weren't even playing, they'd be like, are you going to go catch a Pokemon? And I'm like, yes, nigga, I actually am. It's a Dragonite.
So that's the thing. They were always very good about monetizing, but like, and I only really like went back and rediscovered a lot of this stuff, you know, the last couple of weeks. But like, Pokemon persists because it hasn't changed at all in 20 or so years. But Digimon, especially that original series, is still relevant in 2020. Because they were a show that dealt with not just interpersonal challenges, but also like each of the episodes or arcs within the main storyline would often cover like topics that range from religion, ethics, politics. I remember that there was a whole 2-parter that was essentially about slavery, and why it's wrong. Like, Digimon's like aesthetic, like political aesthetic and ethical and moral aesthetic was based as fuck. And it's like super relevant in 2020. Meanwhile, Pokemon is the literal opposite. In their world, nothing actually makes any sense at all. Like, it's this perfectly egalitarian society, but then at the same time, there's like massive organized crime. There are animals that they are pretty sure
that goes unpunished,
as
regularly.
Intelligent or more intelligent than people that they use as labor. But then the show portrays it like, oh well, the happy slaves are over there. They're working hard. They love to work. But the bad slaves, the rebellious ones, those are the ones we gotta tame. We gotta keep them in their place and then show them what it's like to really live a meaningful life in service to humans. Right? Like, there's also like a class structure, because it comes up as like a point with a lot of characters about who's wealthy, who has money, who's part of high society, and who isn't. Like, it's all over the place. It makes no fucking sense whatsoever. Digimon is quite literally set in Japan in 1999. Not 1999X, not whatever else. It is in the year 1999. And everything about what happens is derived from that time period. So much so that when they went back and started producing the Digimon Tri movies, and then I guess they cut them up and released it as a TV series. It takes place not in present day, like, oh, we've just teleported in time. They're retro. They take place in 2005. it's just a few years after the events of the original, the original series, which is an interesting choice. I think in like 2016 or 2017, whenever these got made, I think somewhere between like 2015 and 2018, because now it's presenting the original series as a retro project, right? Because it's the interpretation of what was done literally 15 years ago, but updated through the sensibilities of modern people. And that's why I heavily recommend Digimon Try, even for people who didn't wind up watching the original series, because it is, in fact, one of the best shows and or movies that have dropped, I think, in the last few years. It's legitimately good. But think about that, right? Like, a lot of pop culture products are very afraid to take any kind of a stance whatsoever about anything. Usually, these stories are very limited to bad is bad, good is good, and if you're being super edgy, there's gray in the middle. Ooh, gray. But despite the fact that Digimon was a very simple show for kids, mostly designed to sell you a whole bunch of useless merchandise that you never really needed, they made an editorial decision. Actually, they made two, because they made the first decision was when they actually produced the original show to include a lot of the difficult subject matter. There's child kidnap and endangerment. There's divorce. There's physical abuse.
Depression,
dealing with adoption. Like, these are not simple issues, and those are all choices to include those as part of the story for drama. But then there was a second set of choices that came when they actually localized it, because remember, this is the original Japanese, that's all that was in there, but they kept most of that stuff in for an American audience or for a Western audience,
right?
So that wasn't necessarily something that, like, especially at the time when this was getting produced, that's a risk. That's a serious risk. And so now, going back to it, I applaud them for sticking with their guns and presenting a lot of this stuff to us. It made a fan out of me, definitely, but more so when you go back and review it, it doesn't just feel like a soulless exercise. I mean, there's plenty of parts of it that are definitely soulless. Every time they tried to show you a Digivice and a thing on TV, it would just sell you a toy. So I mean, let's not get it twisted.
Exactly.
But like,
but those toys felt like they had meaning.
Yes, absolutely.
At least, yes.
So Digimon better than Pokemon. Digimon base as fuck. Great politics. I'm pretty sure that there was in season 2. Of Digimon Adventure. I know my brain is blanking on exactly what episode it was, but there was a point where they had a whole episode where the upshot of the episode was that socialism is good, and that was it. So I think that's pretty sick for a kid show in '99. And lastly, it was a mass market isekai before isekais were cool that still managed to bring the story back to the real world without it being total, objectively putrid garbage. And I'm looking at you, SAO.
You're so fucking right. It is an isekai.
Yes.
Oh.
So boom, hot take.
All right, that's the end for the first hot take. Hope y'all enjoyed that one.